paper. So if you go to our Blackboard page and you click on assignments, here's poetry paper 1. So let's open this and walk through it. All right. There's the due date, Wednesday, March 22nd, on Blackboard, Microsoft Word, or PDF only. Here are the instructions for uploading the paper onto Blackboard, and I'm going to show you this as well. Log on to Blackboard to go to our class, click on assignments on the toolbar, click on the assignment, upload either a Word doc or PDF, click submit. So you click on assignments, which is what we clicked on right here. Click on this, the blue paper 1, browse your file, upload your file, and hit submit. That's all you do. All right. Papers should be in Times New Roman font, size 12, and double spaced. You must use MLA guidelines for format and citation. See Purdue OWL. Also on our Blackboard page, here's a link, MLA format. Here's a whole video that walks through MLA format. Here's a video on the MLA template, or a MLA template. So please look at those for reference. So here's the video. It's 10 minutes.
Welcome to this video on how to format a paper.
And Jason walks you through this. So any questions you have can be answered through this video. And you see, this is what you do, MLA format. Your name, my name, the class, the date, last name, page number. If you have any questions or you can't figure it out, please let me know. All right. The paper is worth 150 points, and the grading will be based on these 5 areas. Introduction and clarity of thesis statement. So you're jumping right into your paper, setting it up, discussing what you're going to talk about, and you're going to have a thesis statement at the end. That's like the main idea of your paper. That's 40 points. Body paragraphs that follow meal guidelines. And I'm going to show you this quickly right now. Each body paragraph should open with a main idea. That's the M. The evidence, the E, is a quote from the text, a quote from whatever poem you're talking about. A is the analysis. You're going to analyze the quote. And L, you're linking it back to the thesis. So again, on our Blackboard page, if you look at writing resources, here's a description of meal paragraphs. So this walks you through meal paragraphs right here in detail. Here's a meal organizer. There's also these writing videos where a video on meal paragraphs. So that's your meal, each body paragraph. And I have examples at the end of this assignment sheet that shows you that as well. You're going to include at least a quote in each body paragraph. That's engagement. When you do a close reading analysis, you're going to be quoting from the poem. So each body paragraph will include at least one quote. That's worth 40 points. So these first 3 are the big money part. The conclusions, 15, proper MLA guidelines, and at least 2 to 3 pages, that's 15. For this assignment, you will write a 2 to 3 page close reading and analysis of one of the poems we have read so far. So anything we have covered up to this point, you can choose. This is just one poem. Close reading is an exercise designed to foster detailed critical analysis in order to find patterns and generate interpretations in a text. And we've been doing these things with all of our discussion boards. So my goal is to, you can take your discussion boards as jumping off points and use some of that material into this paper. When you analyze a text, you look at the significance of what has taken place. Think of how we've been reading and talking about each poem so far. Go back and look closely at your discussion boards and the handouts, how to read a poem, a few notes on reading poetry, and Mark Yakich's notes on reading poems. Look at the themes of our class. What is the speaker of the poem hungry for? What is the occasion of the poem? What is the speaker looking for? What does the speaker want? How is the poem working and or functioning as a poem? Look at some of the handouts, links to poetry. Think about form, structure, style. Often people struggle with writing about poems. One way to jump into the poem in the paper is to practice what we've been doing so far. Choose lines from the poem that are intriguing and difficult. Close read these lines in your paper. Your paper should be, here's the structure. So these are just some jumping off points. Your paper should be structured with an introduction with the thesis statement coming toward the end of the first paragraph. You should follow with 2 to 4 body paragraphs, 1 point per paragraph that supports your thesis. Each body paragraph is going to have one main idea, one main thread. It's not just going to be a jamming of all your thoughts. Follow the Meal guidelines. In each body paragraph, you should choose a few lines or so and close read them. Again, each body paragraph will include quotes from the poem. At the end of your paper, you should have a conclusion, not simply summarizing, but pointing also and speaking to a larger issue or broader context. What not to do. Don't start your paper with something like, life is hard, or the relationships of parents and children are difficult. Don't start with like generalizations or broad platitudes like, a poem can do many things. No. Please don't do that. Nothing broad. That's like pre-writing. This paper, you're going to jump right into the poem. In Henri Cole's Oil and Steel, the speaker is attempting to work through a difficult relationship with their father. In Lin-Manuel's Frying Trout While Drunk, the speaker is attempting to work through a difficult relationship with their mother. So you're jumping right into the poem. Don't include like fluff or words and sentences that say nothing at the beginning. Again, here are some topics. Think about the themes we have been discussing so far: the relationships between parents and children, the relationships between family members. Think of what the speakers do to cope and or deal with what is going on in their lives. How have the relationships changed? How do characters view these relationships? So the first poem, Henri Cole's Oil and Steel. Describe the relationship between the speaker of the poem and the father. What in the poem indicates the nature of their relationship? Look at what is truly inherited from the father. What is it? Remember, it's not the plaid shirt and the motor oil. It's a knack for solitude, which has been mostly useful. Look at what is, how is it both helpful and sometimes harmful? How does the speaker view the father? Does this change? Remember that part, once I saw him weep in a courtroom. What is the speaker hungry for? How does the speaker look back and think of the father? How is work portrayed in the poem? Think about the work the speaker is doing, looking at and dealing with the relationship. When we work on our relationships, this, as you know, is a form of work as well. How does the poem function work as a sonnet? It's 14 lines. Choose 1 or 2 of these ideas and talk about them. You're not going to be able to talk about all of these things, just 1 or 2. C.D. Wright's Tours. Describe what is going on in the poem. What type of situation does the girl find herself in? Is this situation something she is used to? How can you tell? How does the girl deal with this situation? Remember, she goes down the piano in the dark. The piano stands there in the dark like a boy with an orchid. Remember that piano, the boy with an orchid? What does some of the poetic imagery in the poem represent? Again, revisit our poetry sheet. Look closely at the end. What is there and what is missing? Similarly, choose 1 or 2 ideas and talk about them. Lin-Manuel's Frying Trout While Drunk. Describe the relationship between the speaker and the mother. How does the speaker view her mother? What has the speaker inherited from her mother? How is the speaker similar and different? Look at the details and sensory images in this poem. Again, choose 1 or 2 and talk about these things. The other Lin-Manuel poem, While My Mother Lies in a Hospital Bed. How does this poem work as and complicate the elegy? Usually an elegy is constructed after someone has passed away. However, this poem seems to be in the act of construction while the mother is in the process of passing. Look closely at the descriptions. Why does the speaker see the speaker's self-reflected in the mother? Why is there a repetition of I run and also cannot? What does this repetition do? How is the poem illustrating the extremely difficult process, perhaps impossible process, of dealing with the immediate death of a loved one? Again, choose 1 or 2 and talk about these things. Hart Crane Legend. I left this blank. I want you to come up with some questions for this. How does legend work as kind of a self-reflection? What's the speaker doing in legend? How are they building themselves up? Remember, I am not ready for repentance. What are they calling to do? They're kind of laying out their own poetics there. Talk about that. How is that important? Robert Hayden's Those Winter Sundays. How would you describe the relationship between the son and father? How is work talked about in the poem? What does the father do for the son, the family? What is the son doing? How is the son looking back at his father? How does the father show love and caring through actions? Remember, and polish my good shoes as well. Look closely at the final two lines. What do you think it means by love's austere and lonely offices? Look again at the sensory details throughout the poem and talk about how these add meaning to the poem. Remember, there's a play between cold and warmth. Again, choose one or two of these ideas and talk about them. Abu Shanab's on the Dread Ranch Road just off 283. Describe the speaker's relationship with the father. What do they have in common? Are they different in any way? What is the speaker doing in the poem? What is perhaps the speaker trying not to do? My father was a drinker, and so am I. Remember that? The sensory images that jump out to me are sound. In many ways, the poem is a song, a ballad of the triple whiskey jinx, right? It is extremely musical and draws attention to sound. How does it do this? How is the bottle an instrument? Where is the speaker and what is the speaker looking for? What's the effect of this poem being in a sonnet form? Similarly, Haydn's a sonnet, Chad's is a sonnet, the second Emmanuel's a sonnet. Again, one or two of these ideas and talk about them. We're moving into some villanelles now. Christian Wyman's What I Know. Describe the relationship between the speaker and father. What is some advice that pops up in the poem? Why is this significant? What is the shadow and what is the darkness the speaker refers to? What is the relationship with knowing and not knowing in the poem? How does the form of the villanelle, the repetition, add and or reiterate the thoughts of the speaker? Choose one or two and talk about them. Randall Mann's Yard Sale. What is happening in the poem? Describe the relationship between the speaker and their father. Describe the aspects of a yard sale at work throughout. What are some things being described and how do they add to the poem? There is a turn of sorts in the final stanza. Who is being addressed changes. How does this show the feelings of the speaker toward the father? How does the form of the villanelle add to the poem? Again, look at one or two and answer those. Craig Morgan Tischer's Son and Now. Look at these are both sonnets, and I'm gonna have a video that talks through these. What's the speaker want in Son? Obviously, the speaker in Son is a son talking about and thinking their father. The speaker now is a father who seemingly is walking on the beach with his daughter, and all of at once he blinks and she grows up. If anyone has kids, they can relate to that. I don't have kids, but if you have kids, you in a blink of an eye, your kid grows up. So what are they reflecting upon doing in those poems? Beth Bachman. In what ways does the speaker complicate our traditional ideas of talking about death? What do you feel her aim/goals to be? What is she hungering for? It's not closure. Look at specific poems. Look at form, style, senses, language. There is no such thing as closure in Bachman's world. How is the speaker working through this horrible situation? What ultimately is she hungry for? Ravel. How does Ravel's poems complicate the traditional idea of elegy? Ravel uses more fractured language, lines, syntax. How does this style help him accommodate his thoughts, his mourning, his processing? What is the speaker in these poems hungry for? Each body paragraph will have at least one or two quotes from the poem. Below is an example of two meal paragraphs, body paragraphs, looking at the beginning of Henri Cole's Oil and Steel. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull these up on the Word doc. Let's go to our Word doc. All right. And I'll help you kind of set up the paper a little bit here. So here we go. Your paper is going to start, right? You're going to have your intro. You'll have an introduction. Your introduction thesis statement will be about the same length as each body paragraph, and your paper is going to be double spaced, right? So let's put this in the double space here. Okay. Here we go. Line spacing option. You want to make sure these are both at 0 too here. All right. You're going to have an intro. Your intro, will be about a quarter, half a page as well. So your intro will be here. And Henri Cole's Oil and Steel, the speaker and father, the speaker struggles to deal with the father's, difficult relationship, blah, blah, blah. You're going to include some examples of what you'll be talking about in the paper, your thesis. the true inheritance, which is, a knack for solitude, can be helpful and both hurtful to the speaker in the poem. That could work as a thesis. Here's your first body paragraph. Meal guidelines. Initially, the speaker views their father as both untidy and stuck in his existence. Main idea, topic sentence, right? We know that the speaker views the father this way. For example, the poem opens with the speaker relating, and you want to lead into the quote here. You never want a quote to stand on its own. Here's your evidence. My father lived in a dirty dish mausoleum. The description of dirty dish illustrates how the father seemingly lived in an unkempt place, that the living place was unclean. I'm analyzing these words here. The word mausoleum indicates that the speaker views the father as being trapped, or dead in some sense, stuck with nothing but a portable black and white television, reading the Encyclopedia Britannica, which he preferred to modern fiction. So I have another quote here. And I'm analyzing the quote. So you have your E, main idea, evidence, analysis. The note that the father read the encyclopedia, not modern fiction, showcases how he was concerned with the facts. Dead is dead, he would say, remember, the facts over imagination, and can point toward one of the many differences between the two. The first 4 lines of the poem represent the speaker's cold, distant look at the father, and how they are two completely different individuals. However, as the speaker reflects on the father's existence, there appears to develop some type of appreciation for his life, no matter how different. See, I'm moving. And if you're talking about the poem, spend each body paragraph talking about a few lines. Here's the next meal body paragraph. The way the speaker properly names the father's possessions hints at how the father was someone who cared about specific things. Topic, sentence, main idea. We know exactly what this paragraph's going to be about. The next 3 lines follow. You always want to lead into the quote. You never want a quote to stand on its own. One by one, his schnauzers died of liver disease, except the one that guarded his corpse, found holding a tumbler of Bushmills. So there's the quote from the poem. And you put this little backslash in here to indicate a line break. And because, I've given you all these poems, you don't have to, the MLA citation, you could just put Cole, right? And period always goes on the outside. The only time punctuation goes on the inside is if it's exclamation point or question mark from the author. Despite the fact that the father did not properly care for his dogs, he loved them, particularly schnauzers. Not only did they serve as his drinking buddies, but he felt compelled to replace each one after they passed away. The indication that one was left guarding the father's corpse shows their loyalty. So I'm close reading the schnauzers here. Also, even though the father can be viewed as perhaps an alcoholic, the speaker's naming of the father's preferred drink, Bushmills, shows the father was an individual with specific preferences. He was his own person. So I'm looking at the schnauzers and Bushmills here. At first glance, these lines can read as a similar judgment as the opening. However, the specific use of names and descriptions show that the speaker is trying to think of and remember the father as an individual who lived a life. So these are examples of 2 body paragraphs. And again, this paper is only a couple pages. So you're going to be just close reading a few moments of the poem. Particularly if you're looking at a sonnet, right? You're not going to, you can close read a few moments of the poem, but make sure you quote in each body paragraph. You quote and you follow the quote with analysis. And again, if any of you have any questions or you're struggling with this assignment, please email me and we'll talk about it through video. I'm giving you all some extra credit here. If you want to do some extra credit, you hand this in alongside with paper 1. You could just attach it, put it at the end or whatever. Construct, if you want to write some poems, construct 1 or 2 poems that riff, borrow, and or steal elements from any of the poems we have read so far. Look closely at the title, structures, form, images, and subject matter in each poem. For the purpose of what we've been working on, think of sticking with the sonnet form, basically a 14-line poem or a villanelle. You can write something else as well if you want. I don't want anyone's like 5 to 10 page epics though. Keep it to a page or less. So there's your extra credit option. Close read the assignment sheet again. Let me know if you have any questions. And I look forward to reading your papers.